Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another XUnit.net v3 live stream. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are or when you happen to be watching this. For me, it is noon, January 31st, 2021. I'm in Seattle, so noon on the Pacific coast of the United States. Sorry for all the European watchers. It's probably already getting late for you, 8 p.m. in UTC. So I don't know, maybe a little post-dinner napping stream. Hopefully I don't put you to sleep, but you never know. Anyway, what are we up to today? Well, we're going to do some quick reviews. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been together. So let's first pop up the browser and start looking at some of the discussion stuff. I see that apparently votes have been added to discussions, which is interesting. I didn't know that that was coming. Cool. I did close most of the discussions from last time that appeared to have been answered. So this one is a sort of a leftover. I'm going to go ahead and pop all these up. So we'll see. We'll see what these are all about. This one I know is a leftover. So let's see where we left this one. Right. So this is just a refresher. This is the user wants the ability to stop on first chance exceptions, which I don't think we're going to add. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass this by. I need to come through here. I'm going to leave this open though, because I do need to come through here and basically sort of reiterate that I'm not planning to add this feature. But just to see that if there are any features that we need to add to the framework itself to make this work, then I'm happy and willing to do that. So let's see. Please consider adding model fixtures in V3 roadmap. Long-time user can't help to see how limiting current fixtures are in XUnit. This became especially important in later years of the rise of Docker, which allowed easy integration, isolation testing, where fixtures play a crucial role. So just want to remind people that XUnit.net in its core form is intended as a unit testing tool. It doesn't mean people can't or shouldn't use it for other things, but in core form, the features that we work to enable are the ones that are centered around unit testing. And when I say unit testing, what I mean is testing in isolation locally. So whenever I read, I have no idea what this says yet because I haven't read it yet. So I'm just talking philosophically for the moment before we finish reading this together. When there are requests for features that are not unit testing, which I would definitely say Docker, which allows easy integration isolation testing, is not unit testing, right? You're testing a system as a whole. You're not testing an isolated component. My immediate first thought is I want to make sure that from a framework perspective, we enable people who want this behavior to be able to get it from a third party or do it themselves, but we may not necessarily ship it in the box. Okay. I apparently am already a participant on this, so this must not be new. Main issues and current features, so it's very verbose. To be able to write a fixture that runs only once for a test session, you need to be able to write a separate collection definition. Can we just create a class, throw some fixture scope equals session attribute on it and have, okay, so yeah. Okay, so this is something that we reviewed apparently not the last time we were together, because the last time we were together was 15 days ago, but I did say I was going to go through and do a cleanup pass. So I probably came through here and answered that and haven't gotten a response back from this one yet. So I'm going to leave this one as is for the moment. Okay, anyway, stop display name truncating inline data. Let's see. So when using inline data, it looks like the test name truncates each variable to 50 characters. There is no way to do this today. for each row of data is something we're planning to add for V3, but isn't doable today in V2. So there are, let's see, first thought, we are adding in V3 support for setting display name and other metadata on a per data row basis, which is one way that this problem could be solved. Not depending on our object serialization system to help that identification. Second thoughts, I think we have a V3 feature for replacing this behavior, which today is covered by the argument formatter class. Let's go find the argument formatter so we can link this. I think it's actually in assert X unit. Argument formatter. Okay. Argument formatter class. I'm open to ideas about how this might be accomplished if the display name system described above is not suitable. Yeah. Yep, that's what I want to put down there. Okay, so that's my answer to that. Testing default discover to enable dynamic test filtering. Hi, I'm using the latest NuGet version of XUnit. I'd like to add a target environment trait on each test that represents a UAT test for one specific environments. For example, blah, blah, blah. Want some tests that only run in specific environments. Let's go get that third-party extension. That is NuGet. XUnit dynamic skip. Note that this is slightly different behavior than what you're asking for, which is the test still exists. It shows up as skipped. You would presumably provide a reason for skipping, which describes an incompatible environment. As for replacing the default fact discover, there's no way to do that today without major surgery. I'm open. If you open an issue for that, put it in the V3 backlog. Okay. Parallel execution theory arguments. I'm using XGNU test because sequential dependencies cannot execute all tests of one collection in parallel. But a theory test could be executed in parallel with all its arguments. Is it possible to perform the... There's no way to do this today. And given your description, I'm not convinced that we will have what you're looking for in V3 either. We have an odd hybrid of parallelism slash non-parallelism going on here that is, I think, probably unique to your problem area, or at least to the way you've chosen to test it. Is there a way to set max threads for specific tests? I want to have all tests running by default in parallel while specific tests only run one by one. Using collection, they're just not running in parallel to each other. Collection, there's still other tests that are running. Yes, you can do that with, let's see. So what is this? This is in, so let me look at the release notes. I think this is something we added in 241. Maybe it's 240. Okay. Look at all the release notes. How fun. Nope. Nope. Come on. Okay. This is Nope. Nope. Okay, so not there. I thought there was something about this on collection definition. Disable parallelization, yeah. So if I go to V2, yeah, disable parallelization. Yes. So this on the collection definition, setting this to true means that any test in that collection will not run in parallel with any other collections. Serialized run of all non-parallel collections after all the parallel compatible collections have finished. Disable parallelizations. That's really interesting that I didn't find that in Google. Site XGNU.net, disable parallelization. Yes. Changing default behavior. Okay. The parallelism and test frameworks section of running tests in parallel in the documentation. Okay, that looks good. Let's see what's next. Analyzer to convert. Okay, this is stuff that is me. So these are things that were already open. All right. So, yeah, I got my face everywhere here. That was good. Next, let's go. Looks like we don't have, oh, this is not my complete issues list. There you go. There's my complete issues list. So let's go take a look at these issues. I don't have any tags on them yet. Parallelizing test assemblies in TeamCity may cause some tests not to be reported. Been noticing for a long time when running TeamCity on a solution with many assemblies using parallelized assemblies, sometimes a few tests are not reported. 1 or 2 every 1,000. On close inspection logs, I notice that sometimes 2 log lines. This happens, TeamCity only parses the second message, so the first test output is not reported. This is really frequent when running on Linux. So this is done in the TeamCity reporter message handler. And the way this should work is right, it's given a logger and it logs the message. So the logger that it's given is responsible for taking basically a console lock. Right, so when this thing is given a logger here, all right, it passes that logger through to the message handler. The message handler uses that logger. So the create message handler is typically called by the individual runner. So in this case, let's go look at the console runner, right? The logger that it uses is the console runner logger typically, and we pass in this console lock. And so the console lock should get used, the lock object, right, should get used around all console output. And it does. So I really don't know how this could happen. Just validated in console runner logger. Let's go get a link to that. Let's go grab it from V2 because they're using V2, right? Console runner logger. All calls to console write line have the lock object around them. Okay, right, so this, sure, just validated in console runner logger. And all calls to console write line have locks around them. So it's not clear to me how we can end up with 2 messages on the same line. Frowning face. Colors concurrency handling. Hmm. See that you have provided a PR to move the lock up around the colors. That shouldn't have any impact on what's causing your primary issue. Two log lines on the same console line. Happy to merge it, but I'm skeptical that it solves your problem. Assert contains supports several ways to verify collection. However, these one this is actually reopen that. I need to put labels on this. So this is console runner and yeah, just the console runner and a bug. Okay. Assert contains can support several ways to verify a collection contains specific objects. However, you want to use write code for is also the least useful one to debug when the assertion fails. Assert contains blah. Not found filter expression. I would rather write not found, not particularly. You can imagine a structural equality compare class that lets you define this. Bonus points would support, but it's probably not needed. I'm confused. I'm using a custom comparer. I see. No, I'm not confused by that. Let's go find that. So that is assert X unit. All right, so that is assert compare. Actually, let's validate that. So contains is a collection assert, right? So if we go look for contains, right, so we get an equality comparer. Which is the assert equality comparer. Yeah, stop having dumb URLs, please. Let's see. The built-in comparer does already consider I equatable of t and I comparable of t. Right, I equatable, I comparable. As well as I comparable and I structural equatable. Comparable, structural equatable. Yep. All that is true. Oh, I keep alt tabbing. Okay. We do need to make sure that in V2, make sure this is in V2. Means stop alt tabbing. What is it? Not equality compare. Yeah, so I think the feature you want already exists. Maybe I'm not understanding what he wants though. But I mean, this should be what it is, right? Which is, hey, I expected to get this in this collection, and here's the compare that will tell me whether or not it did it. And in point of fact, all of these are forwarding onto this. What's missing exactly? And my label is, I think, just going to put waiting for response because I don't think there's anything for us left to do. It creates a new instance of null message sync, a type that does not overwrite equals. That instance is later used as part of a key in a caching instance inside of extensibility point factor, resulting in caching not working for such calls at all. Get traits. Get traits. Oh, trait helper. Come on, I look for get traits. I didn't see this. Weird. Get the trait discoverer. The diagnostic message sync. Get the trait discoverer. Get. Oh, interesting. It's like that should be in the data. Why is it in the key? Because it's part of the instance that gets created. So if it's None of the key, it's not there. That's fair. That's a bug. That is definitely a bug. Yep, that's a bug. Core framework bug. I'm going to go add this into our V3 roadmap. Excuse me. I should have hit that mic mute button. Apologies to all the headphone wearers. One day I'll remember about it soon enough. Issue. Grab that issue. Take the comment. Okay, V3 roadmap. Let's go. Sample test runner code out of date. Oh, I'm not sure I believe that. So this is samples. Let's go to samples. Make sure we have the latest. .NET Build. I'm able to build it here. So target framework, which is not .NET Framework, and therefore with app domain is not supported, as seen here. As seen here. All right, let's go to V2. Let's go to assembly runner. Say with app domain is only part of .NET Framework. Oh, you won't inline it for me, huh? That's a bummer. .NET Build. New. Boop. Then this is the assembly. What project are you in, sir? Test runner. Test runner. Test runner XE. Yoop. I know. I know it's not straight. I don't care. Okay. Let's go look at this image. You are inspect. Let's see. View image info. That's what I'm looking for. General. All right, so you're 2320 wide. So if I cut that in half, that would be 1160. 1160. So why do I do this? Well, because I'm running at high DPI, and so I want it to be small by default. Small and high DPI, which this thing doesn't really do all that well. So I do an IMG SRC. Width is 1160. Oop. There you go. My suspicion is that you're running in a target framework which is not .NET Framework. Therefore, with app domain is not supported as seen here. Okay, let's go ahead and put waiting for response on that one. Single test failed when all tests run. Hi there. Facing the same problem I saw others got in the past. When I run all the tests, one test failed, but run independently, it works. Using theory and member data from another class uses collect data named bounding box collection. Theory blah, member type blah. Yep. Okay. It's the name of the test, intersects, blah, blah, blah. Looks like it keeps a result from a previous test and uses it for the check in the test that failed. Why would that have anything to do with me? This is the name of the test. Oops, actually, let's pop this up into a new tab so I can stop going back and forth. That's the name of the test. Okay, well, sure. That's the name of the test. Then I believe you. 85. Okay, so you're claiming that something is being reused, which means something is static. I don't see anything static here. Okay, that's a new. This is using things. That all looks okay. All right, so let's go to this member. I want the bounding box intersections unset. Bounding box intersections unset. Yes, so bounding box from 5 points. Okay, your theory data is static. If your test manipulates the theory data, and then the theory data is reused multiple times as is here, then you can end up loading your data across tests. Actually, it probably uses it more often than that, right? Strongly, whatever. Strongly recommend you stop using static data members, meaning get rid of these. Meaning get rid of these. And instead, new instance for every data row. you can convert this static data into static data factory functions, keep the reuse without actually having static data. Okay. This, to me, feels like by design. So I will mark it as such. Goodbye, boundary bump. Stopping on exception. Okay, we were already there. So that means everybody here's got a tag now. Very good. Next, PRs. Console concurrency handling. Blasted statics? Yes, blasted statics, Signiner. Totally agree. I mean, you know, part of the problem is like you have to have the declaration of how the test data comes into being has to be static. So it almost like it encourages you to make the data itself static, but that's not really the intention. The intention is that when you call this little static factory, which is the data member, the property or whatever, or method, the idea is that you would actually manufacture the data on the spot. So like instead of trying to reuse that data multiple times over and over again, you should just be making a new one, because clearly the issue poster wanted to be able to have common sets of data, but you just need to make new instances of that data every single time. Otherwise, you could potentially pollute your data. I mean, you can make your test work with static data like this, but it means you have to be very careful that nothing that you do in your test ever mutates that data. So if that data were immutable, then it would be fine. But I'm sure if we dug in, we'd find tests where they're mutating the state, and that's what's happening. So, I mean, you get what you get. You don't throw a fit. I can't believe you said that, but I did. All right, fixed console color concurrency handling. We just saw this earlier. I told him I would. I told him. Yeah, thank you for the smiley. Told him I would look at this. I'm okay with this merging. The PR failures here. I think these are going to be the issue here with buffer TCP client tests. If you remember, I made a note of this. These seem to be failing on the Unix likes. I kind of want to go through and disable them. Although, what's weird is that I can't get them to fail locally. There's something weird about the CI environment, which makes me feel like maybe it's timing related or number of thread related or something. But I have to figure out what the problem is with those. But as long as I get one pass, I think I'm okay. And the Windows ones do seem to pass. So, I'm okay with that. And we did just look at this. It's just basically swapping the lock so that it's outside the color set and unset. And I'm totally okay with that. So let's go ahead and merge that. Squash and merge. Thanks. So sort collection fix. So actually, this is the one that's up here, which is failing on Windows, I think, because it probably requires a change somewhere else. I'm not 100% sure. So there's an issue open to write an analyzer to convert a cert collection into a cert single. And what Addison 88 did was to actually fix, I made a comment in here that I do this a lot, a cert collection with a single item, which we shouldn't do. We should do a cert single and then just a cert on that single item. And so Sig99, see now I'm thinking Sig9er because you're sitting over there. Addison 88 actually went through and did that, went through and found these instances of this, although the V2 tests, these are all V2 tests? Interesting. Well, the V2 tests I don't care about. Should have mentioned that to them. Although it doesn't hurt to make the change. I would like to understand why this failed though. So I might just pull this and run it. And it's obviously this is a pretty substantial one to review. So I'm not going to do that right now. I think that's going to take a little bit longer than I'd like to devote to stream time for that. So I already had that open over here waiting for me to deal with. So I'll deal with that off stream. Add unit test for double equality with tolerance. I'm going to assume that there's a PR for this. Yep, assert for doubles with allowed tolerance. Assert distinct. This is 2019, so this is one that I think I've been waiting, pushing off, evaluating. Part of solution to 1293. So let's go look at 1293. Better, but dummy value expected. Dummy expected value, sure. Numbers are like down to 12th decimal place. Numbers are expecting more precision than double and done not can give. Precision is the count. This is why I'm trying to refamiliarize myself with what's going on here. A lot of conversation. That this issue goes to the V3 roadmap, and on September 18th, you add to the roadmap, then removed from texting. Was this intentional? Yes, why? Add. Took a look at this tonight for fun. I've got something that looks like it works for me. The main question is on the error checking. I don't find other instances of throwing an argument exception in the library, but I think negative, nan, or infinite values for tolerance don't make sense. Also, the handling of special values needs to be there to test for equality. Collapse the if statement so that there's only one throw exception. I don't know if this style would be preferable to you. Find the code. All right. And so let's take a look at what this PR is. So double double with double tolerance. If the tolerance is nan, or the tolerance is negative infinity, or the tolerance is less than 0, then tolerance must be greater than or equal to 0. Totally okay with that. If either you need to either be equal or the absolute needs to be within a tolerance. Throw an equal exception. I'm okay with this. Like I don't see anything wrong with this as an implementation. And then the unit tests here. Those are okay. Can I convert from double to I equality comparative double? Yeah, whatever. That's just because they're not there yet. So we'll just look at the tests. Assert equal, nan, nan. That should be okay, right? Yeah. Infinite, infinite. Min value, max value with infinite. Infinite. That's interesting. Sure. Okay. And he used cultured facts. Good. Very good. I don't know. I just said he. I don't know that it's a he. Equal nan. So these are checking the guard clauses, right? So this is a failure. This is a failure with nan. just to make sure that we get nan in the message. Failure with positive infinity, just to make sure we get infinity in the message, which is interesting. I didn't know it would do that. Negative infinity. Okay. Tolerance must be, and then here's your guard clause. Your tolerance needs to be greater than or equal to 0. Yeah, I'm totally cool with all these. So I think what I need to do in order to get the other one to pass is I need to merge this one first, right? So go ahead and merge this. Thanks. And this is assert. So what we'll do is we'll go into XUnit. These are against main, right? So let's go to main. And let's go to source. V3 asserts. All right. I'll do a fetch on the submodule, reset hard on origin main. All right. Diff. So we want that as our commit. But we want to do that in the context of this other PR, which is all failing right now. Let's make sure we can add more commits. Good. So this is 2231. Let's go ahead and copy that link. Git node at PR 2231. For that, git fetch PR 2231. Right, and then this is assert double tolerance. Assert double tolerance. And let's put you back on, let's see. So given just that one diff, if I run now, the tests should succeed. Which means I could just add that commit so you get the newest asserts, push that up, everything should pass, and then we can merge the PR. While that's running, let's go look at what's next. I think that's it. There, and then that's it there. That one's already merged. Right, so this is the last PR. Should be fine then. Trying to fix my green screen so that try to get rid of the shimmer comes from the green screen. I've been sort of unsuccessful. You can see it much worse in the big close-up screen all around the edges of my hair. It's kind of dumb, but whatever. Make the shimmer go away. Okay. We're on 64-bit .NET Framework, which means we got through core. And now we're on 32-bit .NET Framework. Easy enough. Okay. Find this assertion library. Go ahead and push this to, it should already be tracked, right? So that should push it up to the right repo. Okay. That then should, yep, we want yellow over here because now we're rerunning the checks. One here is merged. 1293. So someone mentioned that it got removed from the roadmap. 1293. I don't think it got removed from the roadmap purposefully. 1293. I feel like this is a feature. Cert equal for doubles with tolerance. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the roadmap while we're waiting for that. Assertion library. Yeah, see, I don't see 1293 in here anywhere. All right, 1293. Nope. Okay, well, we're going to put it down here and it's going to be done. Issue is this. 1293. And you're done, sir. I do tend to do that. Read a little code formatting there. Okay, our check's in progress. Theoretically, it's in progress. Once the Windows side is done, we can merge this. Wow. Yeah, the Actions runners are a little slower than my dedicated desktop PC with 12 cores or 12 threads. Apparently. What you gonna do? Dropped frames. 371. Why would I be dropping frames? Obviously, don't run OBS on the computer that you do real work on. That's the answer. Oh, my drink's empty. I'm going to go grab something. All right, I cheated and took a bio break while I was gone, and apparently this thing is still running. Ubuntu failed. That's kind of what we expect. 32-bit .NET Framework tests, so we're basically at the end. Oh no, that's V1. Yeah, that's gonna take a little while still. All right, well, while that's running, let's talk about what I have done lately. Well, let me get rid of PR2231 out of here because this is just going to be a little bit crazy. Let me switch back to V3. Let me delete the assert double tolerance branch. Let me remove PR. What were you called? 2231, right? 2231. Better. Nice straight line. Yeah, makes me feel better. Okay. So what have I done since the last time we were together? 16th of January was the last time we were together. So I did a bunch of cleanup. Yeah, whatever. I've been going through trying to make sure that things show up in the correct namespace. Like things that are runner related need to be in an XUnit runner namespace. So a lot of stuff that was in XUnit v3 or even just XUnit now got into appropriate runner namespaces. So that was a pretty substantial cleanup. But what's nice now is that like the XUnit 1 class, the XUnit 2 class, the XUnit 3 class all exist in XUnit runner v1, v2, v3. So when you need those, they'll be there. We encourage people to use the front controller, which stays in the XUnit namespace. So 99% of people, 99% of runner authors would never even notice this. And since runner authors are there's probably a dozen of you on the entire planet, you probably won't even notice. Yeah, whatever. Disposal Tracker made a few changes around Disposal Tracker to basically clean it up. I realized that the old implementation of Disposal Tracker was wrong. And basically, when you added an object, it put it into a separate collection for two separate collections. One for oh yeah, so this is kind of interesting. This is like in the middle of the changes. Put it in two separate collections. One which held the async disposable things and one which held the non-async disposable things. The problem with that is that, then it ran the async disposables first and then the disposables after. The problem is, like one of the values of Disposal Tracker is it acts as a stack. So it will run them in the reverse order that you added them. So the first one you put on will be the last one that gets run. And the last one you put on will be the first one that gets run. Problem is you really need that thing to be interleaved. So the ultimate version of this, when you're all done, has to have that interleaved. So if I come and look now at the disposal tracker, we just have a single set of tracked objects. And then I made one more change actually this morning regarding if you implement both iasync disposable and non-disposable, we're only going to call dispose async. We're not going to call dispose. That was also broken behavior. I mean, it's not 100% clear that it's broken behavior, but it at least better lines up with the notion that if you have an object and it implements both, you probably only are intended to call one of them. And if it has both, you probably should be calling the async version because it probably does more or does it in a way that is more async compatible. Like you can imagine somebody who needs to implement both would implement their dispose by calling dispose async, and on the end of it they call wait, or they call get await or get result or something like that in order to wait for it, which could potentially cause a deadlock. So I made that change this morning as well, so that we're only calling one of them. But this, I added this thing to do add actions because one of the things I noticed in V3, which I don't know if I've totally cleaned all this up, was I had all these cleanup tasks that I was putting in the V3 runner engine, which we'll talk about when we go sort of review where I am there. that I'm like, these really should be sort of collected at the time that they're recorded, and they should just be done like disposals, except they're not a disposable object. They're just an action or an action that returns a value task. So that's that was the other thing I added was this, and we'll see uses of that internally. Yeah, so if you come through here, this is basically the cleanup. The other thing I did with the cleanup was started tracking exceptions. I tweeted about this because everybody should know about exception dispatch info capture. So what I do is I collect exceptions. Every object could throw an exception, so I go ahead and catch it and throw it into a list. If there's exactly one exception, I use exception dispatch info capture to capture that exception and rethrow it so that it looks as though it was thrown from its original place without losing the stack trace. That's why exception dispatch info capture exists, in order to be able to do that. If there was more than one exception, then I put it inside of an aggregate, which is kind of there. I could just always put it in an aggregate if there were any, but I really don't like having an aggregate with one thing in it. Like I don't feel like that adds value. And since I have this capability, because I know how to do it, I'm going to do it this way. Anyway, so yeah, so that's what happened with Disposal Tracker. Re-enable test-driven.net. So that was something I did last night. Because we're getting close on the v3 runner side, I basically decided to turn test-driven.net back on. It is still broken. So if I were to come up here, let's go ahead and collapse everybody. I have V1 and V2 unloaded, but the way this works is they would run with the version of the TDNet runner that existed at the time V1 and V2 were created. So if I try and come through here with assert tests and try and do a run with, oh, this is not where I want to be. This is where I want to be. If I try and do a run with TDNet, right? So if I right click and say run tests, what I'll get is an error that says, hey, I'm trying to run this with V2 and this isn't a V2 test, which is fine. All right. Could not find or load any of the following assemblies, XUnit execution, blah, blah, blah. This is basically, you can see we're running this with XUnit 2. So I just need to come in here and run this with XUnit 3. This is in TDNet runner helper. And I made a comment here, which is, hey, this needs to be using XUnit 3 instead of XUnit 2, which is the truth. Once XUnit 3 is ready, we'll just flip that over, and then test-driven.net should, in theory, start working again. I'm kind of excited about. But I did just talk about front controller. Why doesn't this use front controller? And the answer is sort of implied in what I just said, which is this TDNet runner gets sort of embedded in the NuGet package. And so there's a TDNet runner in, like if I go look at NuGet, NuGet packages, XUnit, let's see, 192, right? 192. I go look in the lib folder, right? You'll see that there's XUnit DLL TDNet. You might not have noticed that file there before. And basically, this is just instructions for test-driven.net to say, where is the runner and what is the type name of the runner, that TDNet runner that we were just looking at. So XUnit runner TDNet that's sitting here is capable of doing the test-driven.net. So it gets packaged up with the NuGet package. So I don't need the TDNet runner in V3 to be able to do anything except run V3 tests, because if you're linked against V1, you're getting V1's version of the TDNet runner. Same thing with V2. Right, if I were to go look in XUnit extensibility core 241, you would see this exact same pattern is here as well. So yes, I'm excited to get TDNet back because that will greatly simplify my uses of Visual Studio. And let's see, talked about that. That's just that. Yeah, what I want to talk about that. All right, so the V3 TCP runner. Let's go see where our PR is. All right, our Windows build succeeded. That's what we were hoping for. That means I can go merge this PR, squash and merge. Don't need all that. We don't need a co-author, whatever. We will just say thanks. So that got merged against main. So let's go pull main and rebase our step on top of it. It's great. That updates our submodule as well. All right. So we should be good to go here. Right, you see the submodule rebased into blah, blah, blah. Very good. Let's go to dev. Let's see. If I look at where it was, dev was, yeah, so we've moved forward. Dev should just move forward to where main is, right? So we'll do that. Reset hard, origin main, or actually the safer way to do this would be a merge fast forward only against main. Right, that's a fast forward merge. So we go ahead and push that. Why do I have a change here? It's module update. That way? Yeah, okay, that's fine. So now dev and main are both in the same place. And then we will go rebase v3. Top of this. Let's make sure we didn't break the build. I don't know why we would. I mean, all it was is those assert changes, right? But we'll do it anyway. I'm not going to run the test. I'm just going to run the build. Should be pretty quick. Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and force push that. Get ourselves back onto a nice straight line. All right, let's talk about where we are with v3 TCP runner. There's a lot of changes in here. I don't think this is the best way to look at it. Let's go instead to runner utility, which is where this is, and go look in the v3 folder. So XUnit 3, I've started the process of creating XUnit 3. And then I'm left this sort of to do here to launch the unit test assembly. So if you were here a couple of weeks ago when I started running stuff, you'll know that I modified David Fowler's Echo server to basically be a pretend runner, to basically be the replacement for XUnit 3. At some point soon, I'm going to want to get that wired up. And so I've created two engines. I've created the runner engine and the execution engine. So many times I've talked about this, there's basically two blocks that are let's see if I can get both my hands in the screen there. There are two blocks that run stuff, the runner side and the execution side. So the runner side is, if you think about when you invoke xunit.v3.console.exe, that's the runner side. And then your unit tests, when they run, that's the execution side. And in old days, the barrier here was an app domain, generally speaking, in .NET Framework. In v3, the barrier here is a process, right? So the thing we're missing now is the process launch to get that process running. But we have these engines, and these engines are basically little finite state machines, although I haven't implemented them quite that way yet, but I'm getting there. So the runner engine is on the runner side. If we go look at the messages that are supported, there will be messages that can pass both directions, right? So they're categorized as messages sent by the execution side and messages sent by the runner side. So the runner side can send quit, which means, hey, we're done. It can send find, which is, hey, go find a test for me. It can send run, which is, hey, go run test for me. It can send cancel, which is basically cancel an outstanding operation. Both find and run are operations that pass along an operation ID, right? So a little documentation here says this, data is operation ID. So cancel allows you to cancel something that's ongoing, because these things could take a long time, right? Find and run. And then info is this handshake that I'm working on right now. And so the other half, the execution side, is pretty simple. It really only sends info messages as part of the handshake, and then it will send messages, which are, our test assembly starting, test assembly finished, test collection starting, test collection finished, those messages that we spent so long getting all converted. And so when we ask for find, what basically comes back is a small subset of messages, which is, hey, I'm going to start finding things. Here's, I found this one, I found this one, I found this one. Okay, now I'm done finding things. And then on the run side, there's a much larger list of messages that happen. Like I just said, test assembly starting, test assembly finished, test collection starting, test collection finished. There's about 40 or 50 of those message types. And so these find and run operations are asynchronous. They basically start the process with the operation ID and then cancel to try and cancel. But as I mentioned, I'm working on this little handshake at the beginning. And so what I've decided to do is I've decided that in order to make it so that this thing is, we could make changes in the future to this protocol without knowing whether the two sides have the exact same protocol or not. I've decided to start doing protocol versions. And so essentially the messages that I just described to you that the runner can send and the execution side can send, those are part of the protocol. Say, hey, I as an execution engine that's doing protocol v1, I will send you info and I will send you a message. And same thing on the runner side. These are the 5 things the runners can do. But then I also decided that what we need to do is we need to pass information back and forth. And so when runner passes information, the only thing it's going to pass is protocol version, right? This is part of the negotiation. And so it'll be kind of a negotiation for lowest common denominator. And then when the execution side starts up and connects, it will also send execution engine info, which is not only the protocol version, which will be the highest protocol version that that this thing supports, but it will also send a couple pieces of information, which today we called across into the app domain to get. So the unique ID for the test assembly and the display name for the test framework. So why do we need these? Well, test assembly unique ID is sort of necessary for everything to work. We have unique IDs sort of embedded all along. And so knowing what the test assembly unique ID is going to be ahead of time is useful information because it also feeds into the calculation of all the other unique IDs. The other half, test framework display name, might seem like an odd one, but think about this, right? Because the runner and the unit tests aren't necessarily built against the same version of stuff, the test framework display name, could be, hey, I'm XUnit v3, but really I'm, 1.0.6, and that could be different than the version of the libraries that the runner was linked against. And so the test framework display name allows the runner to know, at least in a way that can be displayed to the user, hey, it looks like these tests were written against this version of XUnit. So that's what that's for. Okay, so this negotiation, I honestly, because it's been a couple of weeks, I don't remember where I was in terms of all of this stuff, but let me open up the TCP execution engine. I believe that, so what I have done here is I have basically a status, a state, which is kept in the TCP engine. So I have a base class for these both now. And so there's a disposal tracker that's shared amongst, that's used for the engine. There's a current state. So this is the other thing I did. So when I said, a little finite state machine, these are the states in the state machine, which is, hey, I don't know where I am. I basically have only been initialized, but that's it. Runner engines can get into a listening state, right? Because this is TCP, so they're listening for the execution engine to call them back. The execution engine then can be in the connecting state, which is, hey, I'm trying to get connected. We can be in the negotiating state, which is once these two are connected to one another, they'll be negotiating, which is sending those info messages back and forth. Once that's done, then they should both arrive in the connected state. While they're in the connected state, they can send those messages back and forth. So find, run, cancel, all that stuff. That should be happening only in the connected state. And then for shutting down, we have disconnecting and disconnected. There's no reusability, so like the path through the engine is pretty much, from initialize to either listening or connecting. If, once we get through the negotiation and connected, once we're done and we disconnect, when you get into disconnected, there's no way out of this state. That's the end. So that's the intended way that this gets used. So the runner engine is the thing that sits inside the runner. So ActionUnit v3 console.exe. The way these are all set up is we have these command handlers. So because this is a runner, it's listening for messages from execution. So it's listening for the info message and the message, and it handles those. It creates some operations. We only have at the moment send, cancel, and send, quit, but we have 3 other things that it could send. Well, actually, we don't want it to have an info, but send, find, send run. Those will be here as well. But I haven't fleshed that out because I've been focused on the execution side at the moment. And then start. So this sets up a listening socket. Right, so you can see that, this puts us into the listening state. Once something gets listened to, once we accept a connection, then we go ahead and close it because we only want to get one. We grab the remote port, and then we put ourselves into the negotiating state, and then we send the info over to the other side, which should then react to that by sending info back to us. I think that's the direction I want to have it work. So the execution engine side needs to react to obviously all 5 of the commands that the runner could send. So like reaction to info will be, hey, I will give you my test assembly unique ID, my test framework unique ID. The execution engine, I think protocol version already stowed in 1.0, although actually this shouldn't be a hard-coded string here, right? That should be TCP engine protocol version v10. So that's where we default to. So it will send the info back to the other side and say, here's information about me. And quit will shut down, run will run things, find will find things, and then cancel should, in theory, cancel things that are outstanding. On the send side over here, we obviously really only need to send a message. Info is kind of like this thing that is buried inside the mechanism, right? You should never need to send info on your own. That's part of the negotiation. So basically just sending a message sync message for a given operation ID. So I think I have not run this since, but like if I set up let's do common tests, right? Let's collapse everybody. Let's go to common tests and set this. We need to set some launch arguments. So I think what we want internal diagnostics, and then let's do TCP. I think it was 8087. I need to go to TCP echo, source, server, bin, debug, net something, star exe. All right, so that's 8087. Okay. I'm going to open a new terminal window for this. Put it over here. I'm going to make it really tiny because I don't care that much about it. I'm going to make it really tiny. And then we'll go to TCP echo and we'll run that. And I like running clear first. So now we're listening on 8087 over here. Let's resize that so we can see this. Although I think, right, if I run this, common tests should get connected. Let's go ahead and minimize some things. Attempted to get project on an uninitialized command line. Console runner constructor. All right, well, I've obviously screwed something up, so I need to go fix this first. Here, I'm just trying to get everything minimized. Snipping tool, go away, snipping tool. You get minimized. All right, so this was console runner 56 from 363. Console runner was the inproc console runner 56. Just trying to get a project here. I have a parsed command line. Doesn't have a project. 353. That's going to be the static entry point, right? Wait a minute. Am I in the right place? Console runner 363. Sorry, 363. Yeah, there you go. So this is the static entry point. So something's up here with command line parse where we don't have a project in it. So that's a new command line. Project is parse, try. So at the end of this, project should exist. Unless we had a parse fault of some kind. Let's go ahead and set that as a breakpoint. Command line, did we have some kind of parse faults? We probably must have. Yep, unknown command line option 8087. Oh, okay, well that's weird. You do need to deal with parse faults here though. So I am going to put a little need to deal with parse fault here because we try to call command line project, which might be null. So I'll leave myself a little comment for that. What did I do with my, oh my God, not double dashes, single dashes. Single dashes, okay. Control F5, let's go. There we go. So engine state transition from unknown to initialized, great. We are connecting, we are connected. That's interesting that we don't see any other status here. That's because we're waiting for this to send an info message. Although we should be negotiating, I would have thought. So why are we not in negotiating? That's a good question. All right, so if I say info, we need to say protocol version 1.0. Okay, then we got an info back, which has our test assembly unique ID, our test framework display name, which is XUnit v3 0.1.0 pre-293. Something dark side. I don't know what the fuck that is. Oh, that's a plus. U002B, that's a plus. Collection per class in parallelism is enabled. So I don't see any state transitions over here, which is kind of interesting, but I think if I say find and then just pass an ID of 1, we should find all of our tests. We do, that's great. Let's say run 2. We should run all of our tests. That's great, we do. The end should be a test assembly finished, which is it took 19 100ths of a second. We ran 44 tests. We skipped none. So if you can't read those, I apologize. I'll pop one of these up into Notepad just so you can see them. All right, so here we have none failed, 44 ran, none skipped. This is our assembly unique ID. And it took us, 0.19 seconds. Okay, so that part's working. Let's type quit over here now. I'm gonna keep the copy of this info text because this is gonna come up a lot. I'd like to just copy paste that. Okay, that's fine. I didn't see, right, we stayed in engine state initialized. So we're missing some state transitions here. So I guess that's probably where I must have left off, is that I was still finishing the state transitions here. So um, the start here should put us into connecting. There's probably, if I go look at the runner engine, there's probably some changes that need to happen here. So we use the state lock to lock around any state changes. We want to make sure we're in the initialized state before we do this, right? Actually, let's go ahead and put that there. So if we're not initialized, we tried to call start on TCP execution engine in any state other than initialized, which would be bad. Then we put ourselves into connecting, right? Then we say we're connecting, and then we connect, and then after we have connected, we should put ourselves into the connected state, into the negotiating state. Right, so state should now become negotiating, and we don't need that. Okay, so you'll be connected. I'm going to move this message up here. Shouldn't matter all that much. So then the buffered client starts. So we are in negotiating state. When we get an info message, so that'll be on info. Actually, let's go back here. I kind of want to set this up. So let's go to on info. Because what I want here for on info is to basically say if your state is not negotiating. Let's see, unexpected. So some of the things I did here were like, this is clearly just, like this is probably a user failure, that's why it throws. But I think what I have done in other cases is to just say this, which is to just throw a diagnostic message out there to say, hey, the execution engine, engine ID, info message received outside of the negotiating state. It just tells us what the current state is. But otherwise, what this means is we're connected. So that should put us in the connected state when we're done here, right? Because then we're about to send all this stuff and become connected. We'll end up having things like this, like trying to do find or run or anything else when we're not connected should probably be an error. Oh, I already have that. No, we're all right. Stop being dumb. So like find, for example, find message received outside of the connected state. Ignoring the find message received outside. So yeah, if we receive one of these and we're not in the right state, then we just say we're not doing anything. So find and run. These should be connected. Connected. There's a find, run, and then cancel. Should also be this. Quit, we should allow quit no matter what. And we sort of do. So that's good. I think now if I run this, we should see our state transitions. So we tried to connect and failed. Totally makes sense because the server's not running. Let's go ahead and run the server. And then we'll try and run this again. So we went from initialize to connecting, we connected, we went from connecting to negotiating, which is fine. So like if I do a find, it should tell me I'm not going to do find. If I ask to do a run, it'll tell me no. If I ask to do a cancel, it'll tell me no. If I ask to do a quit, it should be okay with that. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and run the server again. Let's go ahead and run the tests again. Since we're in negotiating state, should be able to send this protocol info message. We go from negotiating to connected. We probably need to do some verification that the protocol version that we expect is reasonable. But we send back what we intend to talk. So now I should be able to do find, and I got my tests back. And you can see these are discovery messages. So once again, if I pop into, I can pop into here, I guess, paste one of these. Right, so this is, actually, will this thing format? This might even format. You don't know JSON, but you know JavaScript. Oh, JSON's under JavaScript. So let's see if I format it. There is a format, right? Selection, format, tools, format, view, format. Someone's got format, right? Apparently don't use this editor enough to know where format is. Sort lines, permute selections, reverse, unique, shuffle. Like maybe this doesn't actually do formatting. That would be weird, right? Syntax, we did that already, right? Go to tools, command palette. Yeah, I don't see anything about format. Well, let's at least get some word wrap in here. Indentation. No, line endings, windows, sure, word wrap. Anyway, I got a little highlighting here. So yeah, this is a test case discovered, for example, right? So the display name of this is unique ID generator tests plus for assembly, blah, 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 blah. Here's a test case unique ID, our test class unique ID, our test collection unique ID. See, this is kind of why I wanted it formatted so I could see this stuff. And denote traits. Anyway, so that's the kind of messages that come back during find. I feel like the execution side is good enough for the moment. So it feels like. So I'm going to go ahead and we should now start thinking about the runner side, about getting the runner side to actually do stuff. Okay. So then the runner engine. I believe this should be usable. So one of the interesting things that we still have to deal with, we saw here with, where's XUnit 3? It's not open anymore. We need to launch the unit test assembly. One of the things I put in XUnit project assembly is the target framework. So I expect to be able to use the target framework to figure out how to launch the thing. And I don't know how I'm going to need some extensibility here because, I mean, I can sort of hard code in, hey, if you're .NET Framework, you're an exe file and I just run you. And if you're .NET Core, then I .NET exec you or whatever. So I'm gonna have to figure out what the best way to do that is. But like for right now, I'll just make some hard coded assumptions about being able to launch the executable. So if I do that, I think what I need here is, all right, the test assembly. What I want to do is I want to be in the folder where the test assembly is as the working directory. So process start. So process start info. Start info is a new process start info. So the file name is going to be the application, which should be in our project. The assembly, oh, we don't have a project here. We have an assembly file name. That's fine. It is kind of, I thought we were going to have a project here. Did I move these over to use projects? No, these haven't been moved over to use projects either. I think that's probably something I intend to do later. Oh, this will work for now. So the working directory is going to be path get directory name of the assembly file name. Yeah, okay. If not, name is null or white space of the working directory. And start into the working directory is working directory. What else in here? Arguments. So this is going to be TCP and then our port number, right? And then we process start this. This is going to give us back a process. Read only process, read only process. And then process is process start. And that might return a nullable, returns a new process, or null if no process is started. Note that a new process is started alongside already running instances. The same process, independent from the others. In addition, start may return a non-null process with its process has exited property already set to true. In this case, the started process may have activated an existing instance of itself and then exited. Okay, sure. So this might be null. I don't know why it would be null. Null if no process is started. So hard not null. Now we need a message here, which is a null process from process start. I don't know why we would have that, but there we go. We've now launched the process. When we clean up, so dispose async has a disposal tracker dispose async, which will have ended up disposing our engine. Disposing the engine runs the exit. So what we need here is we need to await this, and then we want to say process. We want to wait for the thing to be exited, right? Has exited. Wait for exit. Milliseconds. And if the thing doesn't actually exit, then we'll probably throw a warning message out. Process, let's see, child process ID did not exit within 5 seconds. May need to be manually stopped. That's at least where we'll start with that. So the process launching should connect us up to our port. All right, we haven't done find or run or any of that stuff yet. So we have to figure out how to wire all that up, but we'll wire all that up through the engine. Oh, why are you there instead of there? I don't know. Cancellation tracking, that's kind of an interesting one. All right, how do we support cancellation today? What does XUnit 2 do, for example? Doesn't do any cancellation tracking. How do these things? Oh, there. How's the so front controller is taking project. We'll update XUnit 1, 2, and 3 later. That's apparently where I left myself there. We have no way to request cancellation here, right? The front controller is literally just a discoverer and an executor and a flag to say, can use app domains. To do, support the ability to request cancellation. What's interesting about this is, like, I don't know what the console runner does today. Because in theory, when you hit Control C, it should be requesting cancellation in the console runner somehow, which means that probably the message handler that gets all the way down into the console runner is the one that is trying to track whether cancellation has been requested. So I don't know if we actually need this. It is kind of interesting, though, that because this is a front controller and we need to support on message. Why do we need to support on message? Because we're a message sync. Why are we a message sync? I don't remember why we're a message sync. Probably because we need to be for the runner engine. Yeah, okay. So we're the funnel through which another message sync should be sending us information. So like when you fire up an XUnit 2, you just have a diagnostic message sync. You don't have a regular message sync. Find and run pass-in message syncs. So it's kind of like they don't have to support cancellation here because they don't have to be their own message sync. We have to be our own message sync because that's how runner works, and we need to do the delegation between operation IDs and the message syncs that are listening to them. Okay, got it. Got it. All right. So somewhere in here, then, what that means is this current message sync thing is obviously nonsense. We have a read-only dictionary of string to at least my message sync for operations, right? Kind of interesting though, like if we're just a message sync, I don't think that design is quite right. Like TCP runner engine takes a message sync and puts it up here, but what does it do with it? We call this with deserialized data, but we don't ever use the request ID anywhere. So what we need is something slightly different. We could make an interface out of it, or we could just pass along a instead of calling it a message sync, it could be in essence a func of string and message sync message to bool. Message dispatcher, call it. Right? So the message dispatcher is the message dispatcher is the message dispatcher. And down here where we were passing message sync, instead what we're going to do is we're going to send this through to the message dispatcher. We're going to send the request ID and the deserialized message. Request ID is probably still a byte array, right? Okay. So we need encoding UTF-8, get string from the byte array, your read-only memory. I feel like I'm doing this somewhere else. It's just 2 array. Okay. Kind of what I thought it was, but I want to make sure. All right, so since we're using a message dispatcher, not a message handler, that means you're not a message sync. Instead, your on message. Instead, your on message is string operation ID and a message sync message. And on message is what this thing wants now. So given that, then we should be able to look through our operations controller. They're going to need to be a concurrent dictionary. I can feel that already. And you never needed to be like that. You should always have been like that. Same with you. Love that new feature. Okay. So here, what we need then is to say var dispatcher, let's see, var message handler, no, let's do it this way. If operations dot try get value for the operation ID out var message sync, then return message sync on message for the message. Otherwise, we return true. So now we don't need cancellation tracking. So that's our D dispatcher. This current message sync thing can go away. Sure. Target framework, test assembly unique ID, test framework display name. These two come from our negotiation. So get state. If let's see, so I guess I just want this to come out of the engine. Not an engine. I didn't expose it there. but I think that's what I'm going to do. Same thing here. Run the engine test framework display name. Our target framework is should come from our, we should take project. And this can come from our project. In fact, I don't know what I'm waiting for. What am I waiting for? So I take XUnit project. That'll get me assembly file name and config file name for sure, because that's an assemblies. Oh, this actually isn't project assembly. It's an assembly. Project assembly. Oh, it's project assembly. Project assembly. So I have that. That's going to give me assembly file name, config file name, target framework. So I no longer need those. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with that one yet anyway. The project assembly to launch or find run operations. That's terrible. That's a really terrible comment. Don't need any view. I don't need any view. We'll at least say guard not null on project assembly dot assembly file name. We do not yet support dynamic assemblies for XUnit 3. Probably never will, actually, as it turns out. And now you can stop yelling at me about being null. You can stop yelling at me about being null. Okay. This, we need to stash project assembly. Read only, XUnit project assembly, project assembly. And we'll do this project is guard argument not null, name of project assembly, project assembly. Very good. You can now return project assembly target framework. So we need to implement the finds and the runs. We need the runner engine to be able to expose these things to us. So let's go ahead and generate those. So this is going to be just a getter. Same with you, you're just going to be a getter. And we're going to need basically like start. We're going to need a hard state validation for both of these. Maybe not state validation. Maybe what we need is, what are we doing with the info we get? Execution engine info. you're null. Okay, so instead of a state validation, we can basically just say if execution engine info is null, we say cannot call test assembly unique ID on the runner engine. This is the runner engine, right? Before we have reached the connected state. All right, then we return execution engine info dot assembly unique ID. Gets the unique ID for the test assembly. If attempted, see if called, or we have reached the TCP engine state connected. Or we've reached a state of connected, we'll throw invalid operation exception. So state is not a thing. I mean, it is. Shut up. It's just on TCP engine state. Okay. So basically, same thing here, except different value. Test framework display name, test framework display name, test framework display name. That's the test framework. Test framework display name. Okay. That's good. So that means back here, these are now ready to go. Let's see. So find. Kind of wonder if this needs to expose some kind of state, but people aren't necessarily going to run this directly. So I kind of want, these are going to throw right now. We need a big to-do up here at the top. Operations, let's say, because the engine has asynchronous state, many of the operations here probably need to wait for the engine to reach the connected state for doing the requested operation. This includes metadata properties as well as operations. Metadata properties like test framework display name, as well as operations like find and run. Don't know exactly how, obviously this has to be done. I don't know if it needs to be done right away in order for us to see exactly what's going on here. Maybe. One of the other things we could do here is that during initialization, we could just wait. Right? We could just wait for a fairly long time for everything to happen because this process needs to fire up and get connected. I don't know if this is the right place. Doing that in a constructor feels dirty. On the other hand, doing it in a constructor feels like gives me the opportunity to say, if you got constructed, you are ready to be used. And we won't necessarily have to wait arbitrary amounts of time to do the work you need to do. But the easy thing to do here would be to say, wait for engine ready. All right. Wait task is going to be a task delay, milliseconds. The state task is going to be task run. Finished is going to be task when any. Wait task. State task. Return. You are async. Return finished was the state task. And this needs to be something like we need like a cancellation in here too, don't we? Is there a way for me to do cancellation? Well, I mean, I can pass a cancellation token in here. Definitely want to first thing we can do is actually just check for the correct state. Runner engine state. You're connected. You're disconnecting. You're disconnected. Then we're good to go. That's our short circuit. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Some cases that can be canceled after the specified, that will be canceled after the specified time span. Well, that means I don't have to do a task delay there, do I? Mm-hmm. Do it again. Let's see. All true. I kind of feel like I want to have a little state helper on this TCP engine state extension method. So where are we? TCP engine state extensions. Come on. TCP engine state extensions. public static pool is ready. What namespace are you in? You're in runner v3. Okay, it's fine. Where was I? I was in X unit 3, right? All right, easy enough. Determines if the engine state is in one of the ready states. It should be connected, disconnecting, disconnected. Maybe not calling it ready is correct. Now it's called has reached connected state. That's what we'll call it. Extension methods for TCP engine state. Okay. Has reached connected state. Runner engine dot state has reached connected state. Then you can be true. Oh, that's an interesting one, isn't it? This thing is going to wait. What are you upset about? Yeah, okay. You haven't returned anything. Okay, you haven't waited anything. That's fine. Wait, task delay. 50 milliseconds with our cancellation token source token. We'll just throw that right up here. Is cancellation requested? Confirm false. There. That looks good. Actually, you don't need to be out there anymore. You can be in here. Engine ready. Okay. The fact that this had to be async, very, very clear that it shouldn't be here. Problem is, putting it in properties is also problematic, isn't it? And these find and runs, they're all void, so I can make them async, but that also means I have a really hard time reporting that status back. Because I made it async. Don't have to make it async though. I did a task run here. Because it's task run, then I know that I can just wait for the result like that. evil code, but in the exact context in which I'm doing it, it's okay. Oh, we know that's going to spawn a task, and then we know this doesn't have to run on our own context. Now I can use it in synchronous places, like here. Set a default. And we'll just say, wait for engine ready. Pretty exciting. He says, every one of these now needs a wait for engine ready. Okay, so given find, what I should be able to do is I should be able to say runner engine send find. We're going to need an operation ID. We have nothing here for that. We just go, runner engine needs to implement send find. We knew that was coming. Cancel, send quit. So there's send find. We send find, the operation ID, find operation. All right, we do all of this. Send find, called when there's no connected, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do a find with an operation ID. That's great. Can't do complex find yet. We'll work that out later. So I think what I really want, let's see, what is the easiest way to test this now? I think if I console runner, wrong console runner. You're going to use XUnit front controller. Has XUnit front controller been updated for v3 yet? It has. And it's just at the moment upset about the lack of project. Assembly project. To virtual, create the inner controller. So where's our assembly projects? We were given an assembly. Project assembly, that's what I meant, project assembly. These are types. What did I do with the project assembly that was given to me? I set values all over the place, but I never kept it. Okay. You should be called project assembly. So should you. Now you get stashed, and you can get used here. Okay. But right now, this thing, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to do find, which is perfectly okay, because that's not a crazy find. That should work. When it tries to run everything, that's when it's going to fail. Non-nullable project assembly has to have something dark side. Fine. It's okay. Those are tests that I broke because I changed the signature of engine tests, which is fine. I think now, though, what I should be able to do, you can get maximized again. You can go away. I think I should be able to say source section D3 runner console bin debug net something or other. All right. I should be able to pass source xunit b3 assert tests bin debug net 472 assert tests. Woohoo! That did something. That did something. Wow. It did a whole bunch of somethings that didn't even really know what to do with. Initialized to listening, discovering, connection accepted, negotiate, listening, negotiate, connected, error during message processing, message blah. Attempted to get test case on an uninitialized test case discovered object. Test case discovery sync. Engine ID TBD. Yay. Okay, let's see. So this TCP runner engine on message test discovery sync. So our test discovery sync that we passed in from XUnit 3 is trying to get test cases out of it. And there is no test case in test case discovered here. For XUnit 3, that's because our test case discovery sync is probably not actually the right kind of sync to be sending here. Or we need to figure out, because we know that the message that we get over here isn't correct. Doesn't have a test case in it, I should say. All right, we know we're trying to get test cases out of this discovery sync. Using var discovery sync equals new logger discovery sync. We just need one of those. Actually, we can leave that test discovery sync in place. Can we? No, actually we can't. Don't need to using for this. Means you can go inside there. Let's go take a look at test discovery sync. We are just trying to hack this to work. Just to see what we can get going here. You need to give me back test cases. Which is this. You can absolutely be empty. And then we need this. And the message is test discovery. Let's see, discovery complete. Dimension set. Turn true. Else if message is in this case discovered. I'm just going to do a little console write line. Discovered dot display name, test case display name. Okay. That'll come back with nothing. And if there's nothing to run, then it won't try and run, which means it shouldn't crash, I think. See that, right? Look at you. Plop. Woo. All right, doing its thing. And then, interesting that I get all these diagnostic messages. I thought these were only internal diagnostic messages, but what do I know? The pop-up, kind of an interesting one there, right? I think I can fix that. I mean, I kind of like it. It's this process info startup stuff. Create no window. True. Well, that didn't help, did it? Still create a window. How about window style? How about that? Better. No more pop-up. All right. So I think, yeah, some good progress. Yeah, been going for 2.5 hours, so I feel like this is a good place for me to take a break. Get hydrated. Obviously, I've not been drinking enough water. Um, but I mean, in theory, we can see that thing is doing what I ask it to do. We do get the process launched. We do run it. We can get the find to work. We are getting test cases back across the list. Because I returned an empty list back, I don't have a run. So I still need to think about how to implement the other version of find, which is a type-based find, and then the 3 versions of run. In particular, I'm going to need to be able to run test cases like a filtered test case list. But perhaps what's more important here is that we can't assume that discovered test cases actually have a test case property on them. Because, because we can't, right? We're going to need to enable serialization and basically start looking at the serialized values. And we're going to have to do our filtering without having an actual test case object in there. I don't know how we're going to do that yet. It might be that what we end up having to do is pass the filter through. That's kind of what I had assumed might end up needing to be the case. So that when we say, hey, find and filter, like maybe that operation now needs to become something that's handled by the front controller / each of these individual things. And so the filtering logic will filter down into XUnit 1, XUnit 2, XUnit 3, where 1 and 2 will just do a regular find and then filter as things come back, but 3 can send that filtering expression, whatever that filtering expression ends up being, across the wire so that the only things that come back are the other things. Either that, or we just need to see if maybe the other thing is just see if I can rewrite the filter based on the test discovery message, test case discovered message, without taking a reference to the test case itself. Can I filter based on the things that are in the metadata of the test case without actually having the rich test case object? Because if the answer is no, then I probably just need to enhance the shape of that object so I can do the filtering without having to I can do the filtering without having to figure out a filter expression that goes across the wire. Anyway, lots of things to think about, but I feel like some good success here. I have no idea how I'm going to test any of this yet. So, like, obviously, I've been throwing this stuff in a branch and not putting it in even in dev, much less main, because I really don't know how all this stuff gets tested. Some things have gotten tested, like the engines have gotten tested. In some cases, we've seen the engine tests are insufficient, unfortunately, or they break in CI. So I also have to fix that. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today. I think, next week we'll be picking up where we left off. So anyway, thanks and see you next time.